Today is June 21st, 2022. It is a Tuesday. And, the Supreme Court's back at doing their thing. And a lot of what's going on is based on the Supreme Court's ideology of being constitutional originalists. And I think we need to break this down because I sincerely believe that if all of the non-fundamentalist Christian folk, all minorities, all genders, religious affiliation became constitutional originalists, we could actually fight fire with fire in a way they're not willing and ready to go. Okay? So, in other words, it may avoid the fascist state that they want to impose, and they don't have the right to do it based on the Constitution. So, in 1776, July 4th, which, you see these signs, 1776, the Constitution was not signed. It was the Declaration of Independence. And as you can see, the first basic idea is God made all men equal and gave them rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That is mistaken as men and only men. And the issue with that is the verbiage, because if it said mankind, you would not say womankind and childkind. It would pretty much encompass everybody. The issue is that the founding fathers didn't necessarily practice what they preached and kept it as white landowning men. However, we now are here and it's like, no, we do not have to go back to Christian white landowning men. And that was in 1776. So the Constitution was introduced in 1787, ratified in 1788, and put into action in 1789. And with that came the first 10 amendments, also known as the Bill of Rights. So if we're going for the Constitution, what does that mean? Well, the purpose of the Constitution is checks and balances in the government, especially at a federal level, because you don't want one particular area of the federal government going gangbusters and ruin it for everybody. But also, they had to have checks and balances with individual states. That's where we start having our issues, because then states are like, oh, well, we have states' rights. That makes sense. You don't want urban development in the middle of Iowa when they need more agricultural help. So I can understand that. However, even in the Constitution, it says that the states are still obligated to protect fundamental rights of American citizens, which goes back and you start thinking, well, what rights are those? That goes back to the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So what happened is when you have states' rights, you have people who say, oh, it's my state's right. Well, it's the right of every American citizen in that state, not just white Christian fundamentalist evangelical males, landowning males. It has to be everybody in that state. So when they start saying, oh, well, we don't want to give kids an education, well, that goes against life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. For a child that's 6, 7 years old, we have determined as a society, children have the right to be educated. I don't want voting rights acts. Well, we shouldn't have to have a voting rights act because that's pursuant of my life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. You don't have the right to keep that away from me. Plus, that was the basis of the Revolutionary War, was taxation without representation. If I don't have the right to vote, I am being taxed as a U.S. citizen without the representation. And so if somebody wants to marry someone of a different race, you don't have the right to stop that. And the reason why we have amendments is because so many people said, oh, well, I don't think you should have the right to do that because that's against my personal beliefs. Well, it's not against the beliefs of the Declaration of Independence. So if somebody wants to marry someone of another race, you had no right to stop them from doing that. And that's why we have the amendments and we have the different laws that say you have the right to do this based on these amendments. So what the Supreme Court is doing is trying to do these workaround with amendments, saying, well, they're not part of the original Constitution. They are correct. An amendment means to change, to add to, take away from. However, even in the Constitution, you still have to uphold American citizens' rights. What are those basic fundamental rights? That goes back to the Declaration of Independence, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So in layman's terms, the Declaration of Independence as ensured by the Constitution, gives us basic human rights that Christian fundamentalists are trying so hard to strip away to invoke a fascist state. They don't have the constitutional right to do such. And I think if more of us became constitutional originalists and fought them from that, they're not going to give it up, because they're already starting to have a fit as all these stupid, turning of laws, so-called settled laws, is coming out. People are getting mad even on the right side of life. We need to use that to our advantage.